My beloved soul, something happened that you were never supposed to overlook. On August 28th, you may finally understand why the last 3 weeks have felt different. You asked God for a sign 3 weeks ago. Maybe you whispered that prayer when nobody was listening. Maybe you asked through tears, uncertainty, or complete exhaustion. You wondered, God, if you hear me, please show me something. Give me clarity. Let me know what I should do. And here is the revelation that may surprise you. The sign you have been waiting for may not be coming. It may have already happened. Archangel Michael's message carries one simple instruction. Look closer. Do not immediately search the sky for something dramatic. Do not assume that God's guidance must arrive with thunder, a miracle, or an impossible coincidence. Think carefully about what has changed during these last 3 weeks. A conversation happened. Someone's behavior suddenly became clearer. A plan unexpectedly stopped. A door closed when you desperately wanted it to open. Or perhaps something inside you became strangely calm about a situation that once kept you awake at night. You may have called it ordinary, disappointing, or accidental. But what if that was the very moment that caused you to see what your prayer was really asking you to see? There is one detail you must remember. When you asked God for confirmation, you probably imagined what the answer should look like. That expectation can make an answer difficult to recognize when it arrives differently. You asked for direction, but perhaps what appeared was a delay. You asked for protection, but perhaps someone walked away. You asked for truth, and suddenly a person's action spoke louder than their promises. You asked for peace, and something you once chased began losing its power over your heart. Look closer. The answer may be hiding inside the change you almost dismissed. August 28th is an invitation to recognize, not panic. Archangel Michael is traditionally associated with courage and protection, and that is exactly the posture this moment calls for. Courage to examine what happened without fear, and wisdom to avoid turning every coincidence into a supernatural message. Pray over what you have noticed. Test it with patience. Ask whether it leads you toward truth, peace, wisdom, and a stronger relationship with God. And there is something especially important about the last 3 weeks. Think back carefully. What happened shortly after you made that prayer? Who contacted you? Who became distant? What unexpected information reached you? What plan changed? What truth became impossible to ignore? One of those moments may carry more meaning than you first realized. You have been looking ahead, waiting for God to send something new, while the clue may already be behind you. Look closer, because once you recognize what has already changed, the last 3 weeks may suddenly tell a completely different story. There is a moment from about 3 weeks ago that deserves your attention now. Not because you need to force yourself to remember every detail, but because somewhere in that period, you may have spoken words to God that came from a deeper place than usual. Perhaps you were alone when you said them. Perhaps nobody knew how uncertain you felt. You may have looked completely normal to everyone around you while carrying a question that followed you from morning until night. And eventually, quietly, you asked God for clarity. You asked Him to show you what was true, what needed to change, or which direction you should take. Now think about what happened afterward. This is where Archangel Michael's message becomes meaningful. Do not focus only on what you expected to happen. Focus on what actually happened. When people ask God for a sign, they often create an image of the answer before it arrives. They imagine a dramatic breakthrough, an unmistakable message where circumstances suddenly falling perfectly into place. But sometimes clarity enters through an ordinary doorway. Something shifts so quietly that you do not recognize its importance until later. Maybe you prayed about a relationship. You wanted to know whether someone truly belonged in your life, and instead of receiving an obvious answer, you began noticing behavior you had previously excused. Words stopped matching actions. A conversation revealed something important. Or perhaps the opposite happened. Someone unexpectedly demonstrated loyalty when you had almost stopped believing they cared. Nothing supernatural had to appear in the room. The information itself gave you something to prayerfully discern. Maybe your request concerned work, money, family, your home, or a decision you were afraid to make. You asked for direction, and then an opportunity disappeared. At first, you called it disappointment. You wondered why something you had prayed about seemed to move farther away. But what if that interruption caused you to notice another possibility? What if the delay forced you to ask a better question? Sometimes what feels like silence creates enough space for truth to become visible. This is why you must remember the prayer before interpreting the events that followed it. Go back in your mind. What exactly were you asking God to help you understand? Was it, should I keep holding on? Was it, can I trust this person? Was it, is this direction right for me? Or was your prayer even simpler? God, please show me that you are still with me. Do not manufacture an answer. Do not make every number, dream, conversation, or coincidence carry a meaning it cannot prove. Archangel Michael is associated with courage, and courage is needed here because genuine discernment is sometimes quieter than excitement. It means being willing to see reality as it is rather than as you desperately wanted it to be. It means praying, observing, waiting, and refusing to let fear make the decision for you. And perhaps that is why August 28th matters so deeply in this message. It becomes a point of reflection, a moment to stop searching far away and examine what these 3 weeks have already revealed. You may discover that your circumstances have been speaking more clearly than you realized. There is another possibility too. The sign may not have been something around you. It may have been something within you. Notice what no longer frightens you the way it once did. Notice what you no longer feel compelled to chase. Notice where peace has appeared without explanation. Notice the decision you once could not imagine making that now feels possible. Something has shifted. And before you dismiss that shift as insignificant, remember what you asked God 3 weeks ago. Because the prayer you nearly forgot may be the very key that explains why one ordinary moment from these past weeks suddenly deserves a much closer look. Chosen soul, the clue you almost ignored may be the one that deserves your attention most. Think about the last 3 weeks again. But this time do not search only for something dramatic. Look at the ordinary moments. A sentence someone spoke without realizing how deeply it would affect you. A message arriving at an unusual moment. A plan changing unexpectedly. A conversation ending differently than you imagined. A sudden understanding that made you sit quietly afterward. What if the answer you asked God for did not announce itself as an answer? What if it simply entered your life disguised as an ordinary moment and waited for you to notice? This is where discernment becomes important. Not every coincidence is a divine sign, and you do not need to turn every small event into a secret message. But when you prayed for clarity 3 weeks ago, you were asking to see something differently. Perhaps that is exactly what began happening. Instead of changing everything around you immediately, your circumstances may have revealed information that was already there. Someone showed you their priorities. A closed door forced you to reconsider your direction. A delay gave you time to notice what rushing had hidden. Something you once defended suddenly became difficult to ignore. Archangel Michael is traditionally connected with courage, protection, and standing firmly in truth. Let that symbolism guide you here. Courage is not about becoming afraid of hidden signs around every corner. Courage is being willing to acknowledge what has become clear. Sometimes we ask God to reveal the truth, then become uncomfortable when reality does not match what we hope to hear. We ask for protection, then become confused when something is removed. We ask for direction, then resist when the familiar road becomes difficult to continue. Look closely at what happened after your prayer. Was there a conversation that confirmed something you had quietly suspected? Did someone unexpectedly step forward when others disappeared? Did you discover information that changed your understanding of a situation? Did something fail to happen, only for you to realize later that the delay protected you from making a rushed choice? Perhaps nothing outside you changed dramatically at all. Perhaps the clue was the unusual peace that entered your heart after weeks of confusion. Peace can be easy to underestimate because it does not make noise. Imagine spending weeks desperately trying to control an outcome, and then suddenly realizing you can release it. That internal change deserves attention. It does not automatically prove that every thought is a message from heaven, but it can invite deeper prayer. Ask God for wisdom. Examine what is true. Give yourself enough silence to distinguish fear from clarity. This is why August 28th carries such emotional weight in this message. It is not about becoming frightened by a date or believing something terrible will happen if you miss a moment. It is about recognition. You asked for clarity, and now you are being invited to examine what has already unfolded. The answer may have been sitting inside an event you labeled insignificant. And there is one question that can change the way you see these 3 weeks. What happened that you originally wished had happened differently? Stay with that question. Perhaps the disappointment itself revealed the truth. Perhaps someone's silence answered what their words never could. Perhaps the unexpected change redirected your attention towards something healthier. Perhaps the thing you called an interruption gave you the distance required to see clearly. Do not chase signs. Chase wisdom. Do not surrender your peace to superstition. Bring what you have noticed before God and ask for discernment. The strongest confirmation will not need fear to control you. Truth can withstand patience. Wisdom can withstand questions. If this message has helped you recognize what you nearly overlooked, type ISE with wisdom in the comments as a declaration that you are choosing discernment over fear. Blessing code 317 has been released as a symbolic reminder of this moment. Pray, observe, and walk forward with courage. And if these words brought light into a place where you had been waiting for clarity, you can help that same light reach another soul who may be praying tonight for an answer. Scripture reminds us that what is faithfully sown can become a harvest far beyond the original seed, and your generosity can help carry messages of God's word to people searching for hope. I choose to become a seed of light for someone who has not yet found this message. If you feel genuinely led to strengthen this mission, you can give through Super Thanks or through the PayPal donation link provided in every video description and available in QR code format in each video. Let your support be an act of generosity, never fear or pressure, helping another person encounter encouragement when they need it most. May every sincere giver be blessed with wisdom, peace, and a heart increasingly anchored in God's love. So where your heart leads you, and help carry the light forward. Beloved one, there is a reason you almost missed what happened, and understanding it may completely change the way you look at these last 3 weeks. When you ask God for a sign, somewhere inside your heart you may have already decided what the answer should look like. You imagined the phone call arriving. You pictured the door opening. You expected someone to return, apologize, explain themselves, or finally say the words you had been waiting to hear. Perhaps you expected immediate movement after your prayer, and when none of those things happened in the way you imagined, You assumed heaven had remained silent. But what if your expectation was so loud that you nearly overlooked the quieter truth appearing directly in front of you? This is one of the hardest lessons of discernment. We naturally notice what agrees with our hopes, while resisting what challenges them. If you desperately wanted something to work, a delay could feel like rejection. If you wanted someone to remain in your life, distance could feel like abandonment. If you prayed for a particular opportunity, a closed door could seem like evidence that nothing was happening. Yet sometimes an uncomfortable development gives you information that success would have hidden. Sometimes the moment you wanted removed becomes the moment that reveals what you truly needed to know. Archangel Michael is often associated with courage and protection, and that image carries an important reminder here. Protection does not always feel comfortable while it is happening. Courage does not always mean fighting harder to keep something. Sometimes courage means stopping long enough to ask whether you are fighting for something simply because you are afraid to release it. Sometimes protection looks like distance. Sometimes wisdom looks like delay. Sometimes the strongest decision is not forcing a door that repeatedly refuses to open. Think about the situation you prayed over 3 weeks ago. What has become clearer since then? Do not focus first on what you lost. Focus on what you learned. Perhaps you learned that someone's promises were stronger than their actions. Perhaps you discovered that an opportunity carried conditions you had not noticed before. Maybe an unexpected delay exposed a problem that would have become much larger later. Or perhaps you discovered something about yourself. You are stronger than you thought, more capable of waiting than you believe it, and less dependent on one particular outcome than you were 3 weeks ago. A change matters. There is another reason answers can be overlooked: exhaustion. When you have been carrying uncertainty for too long, you can become so tired that even clarity feels like another problem to solve. You may receive information and immediately question it. You may experience peace and then disturb it by asking for one more confirmation. You may recognize a pattern, but refuse to trust your judgment because disappointment has made you afraid of being wrong again. This is where the message of August 28th becomes an invitation rather than a threat. You do not need to panic. You do not need to search every object, number, dream, or conversation for hidden meaning. Look at what is real. Look at what has consistently changed. Pray over it. Give it time. Ask whether the direction before you produces honesty, wisdom, responsibility, and peace rather than confusion and fear. And now consider one detail you may have dismissed. What was the first unexpected thing that happened after you made that prayer 3 weeks ago? Not necessarily the biggest thing. The first thing that made you stop for even a second and think, "That was strange," or "I did not expect that." Return to that moment carefully. Maybe it was someone's reaction. Maybe it was a cancellation. Maybe information reached you unexpectedly. Maybe you felt a sudden reluctance about something you had previously wanted. Do not force meaning onto it, but do not ignore what it taught you either. Sometimes the value of an event is not that it predicts your future. It is that it reveals your present more clearly. Archangel Michael's symbolic sword is often understood as an image of truth cutting through confusion. Let that be the focus now. Cut away assumptions. Cut away the outcome you had already written in your imagination. Cut away the fear that says you must understand everything immediately. You asked for clarity. Now you may need the courage to accept that clarity can look different from what you requested. And when you examine the first unexpected moment after that prayer, you may realize something important. What looked like an interruption was actually the beginning of seeing the situation as it truly was. Faithful soul, someone may have revealed more to you in a single moment than months of words ever could. Perhaps it happened through a conversation you did not expect to have, Perhaps someone contacted you after a long silence, where someone you trusted suddenly became distant. Maybe a person answered a simple question in a way that stayed in your mind long after the conversation ended. You may have replayed their words several times, wondering why that ordinary interaction affected you so deeply. Now, as August 28th approaches, Archangel Michael's message invites you to look at that moment again, not with fear or superstition, but with courage and discernment. Remember what you asked God 3 weeks ago. If your prayer involved another person, you may have wanted an unmistakable answer about their place in your life. You may have asked whether you should trust them, wait for them, forgive them, create distance, or stop carrying responsibility that was never yours. You probably expected clarity to arrive as a powerful feeling or dramatic event. Yet sometimes the clearest information comes through ordinary behavior. People eventually reveal priorities through patterns, choices, consistency, and the way they treat you when nothing is being demanded from them. Maybe someone showed unexpected kindness at precisely the time you needed encouragement. They did not know about your private prayer. They simply appeared, listened, helped, or spoke words that reminded you that you were not alone. Do not rush to label that encounter as supernatural certainty. Instead, receive the goodness of it. Let it remind you that God can use ordinary human compassion to strengthen a tired heart. Sometimes an answer begins by restoring enough hope for you to think clearly again. But perhaps your experience was more difficult. Someone may have disappointed you. A promise may have been broken. Something hidden may have become visible. You could have spent days wishing that moment had never occurred. Yet ask yourself what you know now that you did not know before. Did that uncomfortable conversation expose a pattern? Did someone's silence answer a question you kept avoiding? Did an unexpected reaction show you where you needed stronger boundaries? This is where courage becomes essential. Archangel Michael is traditionally pictured standing firmly against darkness, and there is a meaningful lesson in that image. Truth does not require you to hate anyone. Seeing clearly does not mean becoming bitter. You can recognize unhealthy behavior without seeking revenge. You can forgive while still using wisdom. You can love someone and understand that closeness is not always appropriate. Spiritual courage is not pretending that painful things did not happen. It is refusing to let those things control your future. Think carefully about one conversation from these past 3 weeks that keeps returning to your memory. What exactly made it unforgettable? Was it what was said, what was avoided, or the way you felt afterward? Perhaps you noticed that you were constantly explaining yourself to someone who had already decided not to understand. Or maybe you discovered that a person you underestimated was quietly standing beside you. These observations are worth bringing into prayer. And there may be another layer. The important person in this story may not be someone else. It may be you. Perhaps you heard yourself say something you had never been brave enough to say before. I cannot continue like this. I need time. I deserve honesty. I forgive you, but I need boundaries. I am ready to move forward. Those words may have surprised even you. If so, pay attention to the growth they represent. The answer to prayer is not always an external event that rearranges everything overnight. Sometimes the first answer is enough clarity to stop participating in your own confusion. Sometimes it is strength returning to your voice. Sometimes it is realizing that you no longer need another person's approval to make a wise decision. That is why the overlooked moment matters. Do not obsess over it. Do not force it into a prophecy. Simply examine its fruit. Did it reveal truth? Did it expose what needed attention? Did it lead you toward greater wisdom, responsibility, peace, or courage? If so, perhaps the moment deserves more gratitude than fear. And now one question remains. If that conversation revealed what you needed to see, why did another door close almost immediately afterward? That apparent rejection may hold the clearest lesson of all. Dear one, the door that closed may be the very thing you have been misunderstanding. You stood in front of it with hope. You prayed over it, waited for movement, and perhaps convinced yourself that if you had enough faith, enough patience, or enough determination, it would eventually open. Then something happened. The opportunity disappeared. Communication stopped. A plan was delayed. Someone changed their mind. What you expected to move forward suddenly became still. At first, it felt like the opposite of the answer you asked God for 3 weeks ago. But now, as you look toward August 28th, there is another possibility worth considering. What if the closed door gave you information that an open one never could? Archangel Michael is traditionally associated with protection, strength, and courage. Protection, however, does not always arrive as something being added to your life. Sometimes it can look like separation from something that was draining your peace. Sometimes a delay gives you enough time to discover information you would otherwise have missed. Sometimes an opportunity failing forces you to examine whether you wanted it because it was truly right for you or because you were terrified of having no alternative. This does not mean every rejection is automatically divine intervention. It does not mean every disappointment carries a hidden supernatural explanation. Some doors close because circumstances change. Some plans fail because people make choices. Some opportunities simply do not work out. Discernment means resisting the temptation to invent certainty where certainty did not exist. Yet even an ordinary disappointment can teach you something valuable when you bring it honestly before God. Ask yourself what the closed door revealed. Perhaps you discovered how much of your peace had become dependent on one outcome. Maybe you realized you were constantly trying to convince someone to choose you. Perhaps you were forcing yourself into a situation that demanded you become smaller, quieter, or less truthful just to remain accepted. Or perhaps the delay exposed practical details that you desperately needed to see before making a commitment. That is not meaningless. Think of the moment when you first realized the door was not opening. Your immediate reaction may have been frustration. You might have asked God why the very thing you prayed about seemed to move farther away. But compare who you were in that moment with who you are now. 3 weeks can reveal a surprising amount. Maybe your desperation has softened. Maybe you can finally imagine another direction. Maybe the thing you thought you could never release no longer controls your thoughts from morning until night. If that has happened, pay attention. The symbolic message associated with Archangel Michael here is not, be afraid of what was behind the door. It is, have courage to stop forcing what is not moving. There is strength in patience. There is wisdom in refusing to manipulate circumstances simply because uncertainty feels uncomfortable. You can pray for guidance while also accepting that some answers become clearer only with time. And perhaps there is something else you have not considered. When one path closed, what became visible beside it? Maybe you finally noticed another opportunity. Maybe you reconnected with someone important. Perhaps you returned to a goal you had neglected. Maybe you began taking better care of your responsibilities because you were no longer consumed by one uncertain situation. A closed door can change where you place your attention, and attention can change what you are able to see. Look carefully at the sequence. You prayed. Something shifted. A conversation revealed something. Then a door seemed to close. After that, another small change occurred inside you. When viewed separately, these moments may appear unrelated. When placed together, however, they may tell a story about growing clarity. This is why you do not need to run after what has already moved away. You do not need to pound endlessly on a door simply to prove your faith. Faith can also mean trusting God enough to wait, observe, learn, and choose wisely. If the door eventually opens in a healthy way, you can approach it with greater wisdom. If it remains closed, your life is not over. Your purpose does not depend on one person, one opportunity, one plan, or one outcome. August 28th is not asking you to fear what disappeared. It is inviting you to notice what became possible because you were forced to stop staring at one entrance. And once you turn around, you may realize something has been quietly developing behind you throughout these 3 weeks. Several small changes are beginning to form one much larger picture. Precious soul, what if the answer was never contained in one single moment? What if it had been forming through a sequence of small changes that seemed unrelated until now? During these last 3 weeks, you may have been waiting for one unmistakable event that would settle everything. One phone call, one breakthrough, one conversation, one open door. Yet while your attention remained fixed on that single expectation, several quieter changes may have been unfolding around you. Now the message connected with Archangel Michael invites you to stop examining each event separately and look at the pattern they form together. Think about this sequence carefully. You prayed for clarity. Soon afterward, something unexpected happened. Perhaps a conversation changed the way you saw someone. Then a plan slowed down. Something you wanted became uncertain. Later, you noticed that your emotional response had changed too. You were no longer reacting with the same desperation. Something that once occupied your thoughts every hour began losing its grip. At the time, each development seemed isolated. But when you place them side by side, they may reveal a larger story about what these 3 weeks have been teaching you. This is where discernment must remain grounded. You do not need to treat every coincidence as a coded message from heaven. You do not need to become frightened by numbers, dates, dreams, or random events. Instead, notice consistent patterns. Always repeated behavior. Notice what circumstances have actually shown you. And notice whether your choices are moving you toward honesty, responsibility, peace, compassion, and wisdom. A meaningful spiritual reflection should make you more grounded, not more afraid. Archangel Michael has long symbolized courage in the face of confusion, and courage is especially important when a pattern challenges what you wanted to believe. Perhaps you have repeatedly been shown that a certain situation cannot continue in the same way. Maybe someone has repeatedly demonstrated that their actions do not match their promises. Perhaps several delays have exposed weaknesses in a plan you were rushing to complete. Or maybe the pattern is positive. Support has appeared from unexpected places. Your confidence is returning, and possibilities you could not see 3 weeks ago are becoming clearer. Look at your inner life too. 3 weeks ago, perhaps you were asking, how will I survive if this changes? Now you may be asking, why was I so afraid of change? 3 weeks ago, you may have believed you needed one particular outcome before you could feel peaceful. Now you are beginning to discover that peace does not have to wait for perfect circumstances. A shift is important. Sometimes we expect an answer to prayer to change the world around us immediately. Yet the first change may happen within us. Fear loosens. Perspective expands. Boundaries become clearer. Forgiveness becomes possible. A decision that once seemed impossible begins to feel manageable. None of this requires you to claim supernatural certainty. It simply asks you to recognize growth instead of overlooking it because it did not arrive dramatically. Now return to the events themselves. What happened first? What followed? What did you learn? What did you stop chasing? What became easier to accept? Write it down if necessary. Not because you need to construct a mystical pattern, but because memory can become distorted when emotion is strong. Seeing the sequence clearly can help you separate what actually happened from what fear told you happened. And this is where August 28th becomes significant within this message. Think of it as a marker of recognition. A moment to gather the scattered pieces and ask God for wisdom about what they mean. You are not being asked to predict the future. You are being invited to understand the present. Perhaps you asked God 3 weeks ago to reveal whether you should continue holding on. Since then, repeated circumstances have shown you where peace disappears and where it returns. Perhaps you asked for confirmation about a new direction, and several practical opportunities have gradually aligned. Maybe you asked simply to know that you were not abandoned, and encouragement arrived through people, conversations, and unexpected moments when you needed it most. One event can be misunderstood. A consistent pattern deserves thoughtful attention. So do not rush. Look closer. Because the most powerful realization may not be that something extraordinary suddenly happens on August 28th. It may be that August 28th becomes the day you finally recognize what has been quietly unfolding all along. And when that recognition settles into your heart, the question changes from "where is my sign?" to something far more important. What am I going to do with the clarity I already have? Beloved heart, there comes a moment when searching must become recognition, and August 28th represents that moment in this message. For 3 weeks, you may have been looking outward, wondering when something unmistakable would appear. You expected another confirmation, another conversation, another change, perhaps even something dramatic enough to remove every trace of doubt. Yet the deeper invitation now is much quieter. Stop searching for a moment and notice what is already different. The answer you asked God for may not be waiting somewhere ahead of you. The evidence that helps you discern your direction may already be woven through what has happened. Look at yourself carefully. Are you still carrying the same fear you carried 3 weeks ago? Does the same situation have the same power over your emotions? Are you still desperate for the same person's approval? Are you still convinced that only one particular outcome can make you peaceful? Something may have shifted so gradually that you failed to notice it. You kept waiting for your circumstances to transform, while your perspective was quietly transforming first. That matters more than you may realize. Archangel Michael is traditionally associated with courage, protection, and truth. Let that symbolism speak to this moment of recognition. Courage is needed not merely to face danger, but to accept truth when truth requires a different direction from the one you planned. Protection is not always dramatic rescue. Sometimes protection is the wisdom to stop returning to what repeatedly steals your peace. Sometimes courage is admitting that a door you desperately wanted may not deserve another season of your energy. Perhaps your prayer 3 weeks ago was about someone specific. You asked God to reveal what you could not see. Since then, maybe that person's actions became clearer. Or perhaps someone you doubted demonstrated unexpected consistency and kindness. Either way, the important thing is not to force a supernatural interpretation. Examine the pattern. Pray about it. Let actions, character, wisdom, and time speak alongside your emotions. Perhaps your prayer was about a decision. You wanted God to show you which direction to take. Since then, one option may have become increasingly difficult while another slowly became possible. That does not automatically make every obstacle a divine command, but it gives you real information to consider. Discernment is not passive. It includes prayer, patience, facts, wise counsel, and the courage to make responsible choices. Now remember the overlooked moments. The conversation that changed something. The delay that frustrated you. The silence that exposed a pattern. The unexpected peace. The person who showed up. The opportunity that disappeared. The new possibility you noticed only after the old one stopped consuming your attention. These were scattered pieces before. Now you can place them together. And suddenly, the picture looks different. August 28th does not need to frighten you. You are not standing before a deadline where everything will collapse if you fail to decode a hidden sign. Instead, let this date become a reminder to pause and recognize what these weeks have taught you. God does not need your panic in order to guide you. You can approach Him with a clear mind, an open heart, and the willingness to accept an answer that looks different from the one you originally imagined. There is freedom in that realization. You do not have to chase endless confirmation. You can pray, observe, and move carefully. You can admit what you know while remaining humble about what you do not know. You can trust that wisdom does not disappear simply because you take time to discern it. To look closer once more. The sign you asked for may have been less about predicting what happens tomorrow and more about revealing what you needed to understand today. Perhaps the real gift of these 3 weeks have been clarity. If this recognition speaks to your spirit, type "I receive clarity with peace" in the comments. Blessing code 828 is your symbolic reminder. Choose courage over confusion, wisdom over fear, and peace over endless searching. And if this message has become a lamp during a season when you needed direction, you can help that light reach someone else who is still searching in the dark. Scripture teaches that a lamp is meant to give light, and your generosity can help carry messages centered on God's Word to another heart that needs encouragement. I choose to help this light travel farther than my own screen. If you sincerely feel led to support that mission, use Super Thanks or the PayPal donation link found in every video description and available through the QR code in each video. Let your giving be a free act of generosity, never pressure, fear, or an attempt to purchase a blessing. May God bless every sincere giver with wisdom, peace, and a heart overflowing with compassion. Let the light keep moving and help place this message before another waiting soul. Gentle soul, the greatest evidence of what these 3 weeks have done may not be found in what happened around you, but in what changed within you. You have spent so much time examining conversations, delays, closed doors, unexpected moments, and the behavior of other people that you may have overlooked the person standing at the center of all of it, you. Something inside you may no longer respond the way it did when you first asked God for that sign. And as August 28th comes into focus, Archangel Michael's message invites you to notice that inner shift with courage, patience, and wisdom. Think about the person you were when you made that prayer 3 weeks ago. Perhaps you were anxious about losing something. Maybe you could not imagine your future without a certain person, opportunity, plan, or answer. You wanted certainty immediately because uncertainty felt unbearable. You may have checked your phone repeatedly, replayed conversations, questioned decisions, or wondered whether you had done something wrong. Your mind kept returning to the same situation because you believed peace could only arrive when the circumstances changed. But look at yourself now. Perhaps the circumstances are not completely resolved, yet something has softened inside you. You can breathe without knowing every answer. You can go through a day without thinking constantly about what someone else is doing. You are beginning to understand that another person's silence does not determine your worth. Maybe the opportunity you once believed you absolutely needed no longer feels like your only path. You are slowly discovering that your life is larger than the outcome you were afraid to lose. That kind of change can be quiet. There may be no dramatic announcement when fear begins releasing its grip. One morning, you simply notice that you slept better. One afternoon, you realize you did not check for that message. One conversation makes you aware that you can finally speak about the situation without feeling overwhelmed. The external problem may still exist, but your relationship with it has changed. Do not dismiss that. Archangel Michael has long been associated with strength, and sometimes strength appears as calm rather than confrontation. It can be the ability to stop chasing an explanation. It can be choosing not to respond immediately when emotions are high. It can be accepting that you cannot control another person's choices. It can be admitting that you need wise counsel before making a major decision. Courage is not always loud. Sometimes courage is the quiet sentence within you saying, "I will not let fear decide this for me." Maybe this is part of what your prayer has produced, not a magical removal of every difficulty, but a clear way of walking through it. Ask yourself what you tolerate differently now. What boundary have you begun to understand? What truth are you finally willing to acknowledge? What are you no longer willing to sacrifice merely to keep something familiar? These questions can reveal growth that external circumstances cannot measure. There may also be something new emerging. Perhaps you feel drawn toward a responsibility you previously avoided. Maybe an idea has returned to your mind after being buried beneath worry. Perhaps you have started reconnecting with people who bring stability into your life. Maybe you are praying differently now, asking less for control and more for wisdom. That shift deserves your attention. Yet remain grounded. An internal feeling alone does not prove that God has promised a particular future outcome. Peace is valuable, but important decisions still deserve prayer, facts, patience, and responsible judgment. The message here is not to turn every emotion into prophecy. It is to recognize that you may have grown while you were waiting. August 28th can therefore become more than a date you associate with receiving a sign. It can become a point of reflection where you recognize that the person asking the question 3 weeks ago is not exactly the person standing here now. Something hath been released. Something has been learned. Something has become clearer. And perhaps this is why you were asked to look closer. You were searching for evidence outside yourself while the strongest change was happening within your own heart. And now another question rises. If you already possess more clarity than you had 3 weeks ago, why keep asking God to repeat an answer simply because you are afraid to act on what you have learned? There comes a moment when searching for one more confirmation stops bringing peace and starts feeding uncertainty. That is the moment when discernment must become stronger than fear. Awakened soul, there is a point where asking for another confirmation can quietly become a way of postponing the decision you already know you need to face. 3 weeks ago, your prayer may have been sincere and urgent. You asked God to show you something because you genuinely could not see the way forward. But now you have lived through conversations, delays, changes, realizations, and moments of unexpected peace. You know more today than you knew when you first prayed. And yet part of you may still be saying, "God, just show me one more sign." Archangel Michael's message here is centered on courage. Do not let fear disguise itself as endless searching. There is nothing wrong with asking God for wisdom repeatedly. Prayer is not the problem. The danger begins when you decide that you cannot move responsibly unless something extraordinary happens first. You may start looking at every number, every notification, every dream, every stranger's sentence, and every coincidence as if your entire future depends upon decoding it correctly. That does not create clarity. It can create more anxiety. The guidance you seek should draw you toward wisdom, truth, responsibility, and peace rather than trapping you in constant fear of missing a secret message. Think about what you already know. If someone's behavior has repeatedly contradicted their promises, do you truly need another dramatic confirmation before acknowledging the pattern? If a situation consistently requires you to abandon your boundaries, ignore facts, or live in constant confusion, perhaps the wisest response is not to search for another sign but to examine reality honestly. On the other hand, if someone has consistently demonstrated integrity, patience, respect, and kindness, fear should not automatically convince you that something hidden must be wrong. Discernment looks at the whole picture. Archangel Michael is often portrayed with a sword, and symbolically that image can represent truth cutting through confusion. Imagine that sword separating what you know from what you fear. On one side are facts: what happened, what was said, what has repeatedly been demonstrated. On the other side are assumptions: what you worry might happen, what you wish someone meant, what you are trying to predict without evidence. Which side has been controlling you? August 28th becomes meaningful here because it represents a moment to stop circling the same question. Not because a date magically forces an answer, but because you can choose to make it a marker of spiritual maturity. You can say, I will pray, I will listen, I will examine what is true, and I will stop feeding my anxiety by demanding endless confirmation. That does not mean rushing into a major decision. Wisdom is rarely threatened by patience. If the choice concerns your finances, family, work, relationships, or another serious responsibility, seek trustworthy counsel where appropriate. Gather information. Give yourself time. Pray without trying to force the answer you prefer. Genuine discernment can survive careful examination. And notice what happens when you stop demanding another sign. Silence becomes less frightening. You begin hearing your own thoughts more clearly. You notice which fears are based on reality and which ones are echoes of old disappointments. You stop giving random events authority over decisions that deserve mature judgment. Perhaps this is the courage Archangel Michael's symbolism is pointing toward, the courage to stand peacefully in what has already become clear. You ask God for truth. Truth may require you to release an illusion. You asked for direction. Direction may require you to take a responsible step instead of waiting for perfect certainty. You asked for protection. Protection may involve boundaries you were previously afraid to establish. You asked for peace. Peace may begin when you stop returning mentally to a question that has already taught you everything it can. Look at the last 3 weeks one more time. What lesson has repeated itself? What reality keeps returning no matter how many ways you analyze it? What decision becomes clearer whenever fear grows quiet? You not force an answer, but do not run from one either. There is a difference between waiting because wisdom requires patience and waiting because fear refuses to move. Only you, through prayerful reflection and honest examination, can begin distinguishing between them. And when that distinction becomes clear, something powerful happens. You stop asking, where is the sign? You begin asking, what is the wisest response to what I have already seen? That question moves you away from endless searching and toward responsible action. Because after August 28th, what matters most may not be whether another confirmation appears. What matters is what you choose to do with the clarity already placed before you. Love's soul, there comes a sacred moment when clarity asks something from you. You have remembered the prayer you made 3 weeks ago. You have examined the conversation that stayed in your mind, the unexpected delay, the door that closed, the behavior that revealed a pattern, and the inner peace that began appearing where anxiety once lived. Now August 28th stands before you not as a reason for fear, but as a reminder that recognizing something is only the beginning. What you choose to do with what you have learned may matter more than receiving another sign. Archangel Michael is traditionally associated with courage, and courage becomes practical here. It is easy to feel inspired for a few minutes. It is harder to make a wise choice when that choice requires patience, boundaries, forgiveness, responsibility, or change. Perhaps you have already recognized what needs your attention, but you have been hoping for one final confirmation so you will not have to take the first step yourself. Yet sometimes faith does not remove responsibility. Sometimes prayer prepares you to carry it wisely. If these 3 weeks have revealed that a relationship needs healthier boundaries, your response does not need to be anger. It can become honesty. If someone has disappointed you, you do not need revenge to prove that you finally see the truth. You can forgive without pretending nothing happened. You can wish someone well while acknowledging that trust may need time to rebuild. You can love people without giving them unlimited access to your peace. If the clarity concerns an opportunity, respond with the same wisdom. Perhaps the closed door taught you to prepare more carefully. Maybe the delay revealed an area where you need more knowledge, patience, or practical planning. Instead of treating every obstacle as a command to quit, ask what the obstacle is teaching you. Some doors should remain closed. Others require preparation before they can be approached again. Discernment helps you understand the difference. And if you still do not know what to do, do not panic. Not every prayer produces immediate certainty. Sometimes the responsible response is to wait. There is strength in refusing to make a permanent decision simply because temporary uncertainty feels uncomfortable. Pray. Gather facts. Speak with trustworthy people. Give circumstances enough time to reveal their pattern. God does not require you to manufacture certainty merely because you want relief from waiting. This is where Archangel Michael's symbolic presence becomes especially comforting. Think of courage not as rushing forward with the sword raised, but as standing firmly while confusion loses its power over you. Courage can look like a quiet morning prayer. It can look like declining an invitation that repeatedly leads you away from peace. It can look like apologizing when you realize you were wrong. It can look like trying again after disappointment. It can even look like admitting, "I do not know yet, and I will not pretend that I do." What matters after August 28th is not whether you can predict everything that happens afterward. What matters is whether you move with greater wisdom than you carried 3 weeks ago. Remember the person who first made that prayer. That version of you wanted an answer immediately. But now you have seen how much can be revealed through time. You have watched actions become clearer. You have experienced emotions settling. You have learned that one closed door does not mean your future is closed. You have discovered that peace can exist before every question hath been resolved. That is growth. So respond to what you have learned in a way that produces good fruit. Choose honesty where you once avoided difficult truth. Choose patience where anxiety once put you to rest. Choose boundaries where fear once made you tolerate what harmed your peace. Choose gratitude for the people who proved trustworthy. Choose forgiveness where bitterness would only keep you attached to yesterday. And choose humility wherever you still do not have enough information to know. There is no need to chase another dramatic sign tonight. Look instead at the pattern that has already formed. The prayer, the unexpected moment, the conversation, the closed door, the internal shift, the return of peace, the courage to see things differently. Placed together, these moments may tell a much clearer story than any single extraordinary event ever could. And now the final realization is approaching. Perhaps the answer was never hidden far away from you. Perhaps it has been beside you all along, waiting quietly for the moment when you would finally stop searching beyond your life and look closely at what God has already allowed you to see. Dear heart, you can release the pressure to keep searching now. For 3 weeks, you wondered whether God had heard the prayer you whispered in uncertainty. You looked ahead for something dramatic, something undeniable, something powerful enough to erase every question. Yet as August 28th arrives, the message becomes quieter and more comforting. Look closer. What you needed to notice may already have happened. Not necessarily through a spectacular event, but through the pattern that has slowly become visible in your life. Remember where this began. It was a prayer. Then came an unexpected moment. A conversation revealed something you had not fully understood. A delay forced you to slow down. A door closed, and although it hurt, it made you look somewhere else. Someone's actions became clearer. Something you had been desperately chasing began losing its hold over you. And somewhere between all those moments, your heart changed. Perhaps that change is what you almost missed. Archangel Michael is traditionally associated with courage and protection, and those qualities offer a peaceful way to close this message. You do not need fear to guide your decisions. You do not need to interpret every coincidence as a supernatural instruction. You can pray, observe, seek wisdom, examine the facts, and trust God without becoming anxious about missing a hidden signal. What is true does not become false because you take time to discern it. If something has been removed from your life, you can grieve it without believing your future disappeared with it. If someone revealed a painful truth, you can accept what happened without allowing bitterness to become your identity. If a new opportunity has appeared, you can approach it carefully instead of rushing because you are afraid it will vanish. And if you still do not understand everything, you can rest there too. You were asking, where is my sign? Now perhaps the better prayer is, God, give me wisdom to understand what I have already seen. That prayer carries peace. It releases you from endless searching and returns your attention to faith, responsibility, gratitude, and courage. August 28th does not have to become a deadline. Let it become a reminder. You are allowed to move forward without knowing every detail of tomorrow. Take what these 3 weeks have taught you. Keep what produces wisdom. Release what produces unnecessary fear. Let Archangel Michael's image of courage remind you to stand firmly in truth, and let your trust remain centered on God. If this message has settled deeply within your spirit, type "I walk forward in peace" in the comments. Blessing code 1228 is your symbolic reminder of this closing moment. Recognize, give thanks, and move forward with wisdom. And as you carry this light forward, remember that another person may still be praying the same quiet prayer you prayed 3 weeks ago, waiting to encounter words that turn their attention back toward God. Scripture gives us the living image of seed becoming harvest, and your generosity can help sow this message of faith into another searching heart. I choose to help God's word reach someone who needs light in a difficult hour. If you sincerely feel called to strengthen this mission, use Super Thanks or give through the PayPal donation link in every video description or the QR code provided in each video. Let your giving come freely from faith and generosity, never from fear and never as an attempt to purchase God's favor. May every sincere giver be blessed with wisdom, peace, compassion, and the joy of knowing their generosity helped carry encouragement beyond this moment. Sow the light today, and help God's word reach the souls still searching for hope.